Ethan Blackwood's private jet touched down hours earlier than planned. A gnawing unease had settled in his chest during the flight, a sense that something at home was terribly wrong. He had tried calling his mother, Margaret, repeatedly over the past 2 days, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Clara, his fiancée, had brushed off his concern with a casual, "She's fine." Don't worry, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was unfolding behind closed doors. The Blackwood mansion stood imposingly at the edge of the city, its tall gates casting long shadows in the dim evening light. Ethan's chauffeur greeted him with a curt nod, sensing his tension. Inside, the air was eerily still, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes the smallest creak sound deafening. No music, no laughter, nothing to welcome him home. Just shadows. As he moved through the grand hallway, Ethan caught a faint, strangled cry. His pulse quickened. The sound came again. Sharp, urgent, almost unbearable. It came from the living room. Ethan's footsteps were careful but deliberate as he approached the doorway. What he saw made his stomach drop. His mother, frail and shaking, was on the floor, struggling to rise. Clara towered above her, her face twisted in fury. The moment froze in time. Then came the kick. Margaret cried out, clutching her leg, but Clara's expression remained cold and unyielding. Ethan's mind raced. Months of trust, of believing Clara's charming facade, shattered in an instant. He had assumed she would care for his mother, not torment her. Margaret's weak, trembling eyes met Ethan's. Relief flashed there, but it was shadowed by shame. She had suffered in silence, hidden from him, hoping he would never discover the cruelty she endured. Ethan's anger ignited, but he kept his voice steady. Clara. The single word cracked through the room like lightning. Clara froze, her foot still midair, eyes wide with shock. Ethan stepped forward, lifting his mother into his arms gently, careful not to hurt her further. The tenderness he showed contrasted sharply with the rage boiling inside him. "How long?" he asked quietly, his voice low, dangerous. Clara stammered, caught between denial and fear. Ethan's gaze hardened. "You kicked my mother," he said simply. In that instant, everything changed. The woman he thought he knew revealed herself as a stranger, and Ethan realized the reality of the betrayal he had allowed into his home. Clara's face drained of color as Ethan's words hung in the air. For a moment, she looked like a frightened child caught in a lie, but the mask she wore for months, the charming, elegant fiancée everyone adored, was cracking fast. "She fell," Clara said, her voice sharp, almost too quick. "I was just trying to help her up. You don't understand." Margaret flinched at the sound of Clara's voice, as if expecting another blow. Ethan noticed, and his chest tightened. His mother had been suffering in silence, hiding her pain to protect him. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Clara, I don't need excuses. My mother is on the floor because of you. That's all I need to know." His voice was calm, but underneath simmered a storm that could no longer be contained. Clara's hands trembled slightly, but she tried to regain control, her words sharpening like knives. "You're overreacting. She's old, dramatic, she exaggerates everything. I'm your fiancé. I'm the one who has to deal with the stress in this house." Ethan's hand clenched into a fist. "Stress? Kicking her is your idea of handling stress." His words cut through the room like ice. Clara's mask finally shattered completely. Her eyes, once soft and alluring, now glinted with raw anger. "Do you know how suffocating it's been living here? Your mother, always judging, always watching. She ruined everything. I'm the one who sacrificed, who tried to make this house livable." Ethan's pulse raced, but he stayed steady. "Abuse is not sacrifice. Hurting her is not sacrifice. You can leave." Clara laughed bitterly, a sound that twisted with venom. "You can't just throw me out. You're supposed to marry me. You owe me. You owe her respect. You owe her safety." "That's it," Ethan said, his voice cold, measured. "Pack your things. Leave my house before the police arrive." Clara's rage flared, then faltered as she realized he wasn't bluffing. "You'll regret this," she spat. "This isn't over, Ethan." Ethan turned to Margaret, lifting her gently into a chair. "It's over for now," he said softly, brushing a lock of her silver hair behind her ear. Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes, trembling, yet relieved. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Outside, The cold night pressed against the mansion windows. Inside, a reckoning had begun, and Clara's carefully constructed world was starting to crumble. By morning, the mansion was a scene of uneasy calm. The night had left invisible cracks in its polished walls, but Ethan didn't notice the grandeur anymore. His focus was singular: his mother. Margaret sat wrapped in a blanket on the living room sofa, her frailty stark against the vast expanse of the house, while Ethan watched over her with a protective vigilance he had never known before. Ethan had called the police, not out of anger, but out of necessity. Clara's abuse could not go unpunished, and he refused to let her manipulate the truth. The officers arrived promptly, accompanied by investigators who began reviewing security footage from the mansion. What they uncovered was damning: weeks of verbal abuse, harassment, and acts of physical intimidation. Each clip was a testament to Clara's cruelty, and for Ethan, each second was a bitter revelation of the betrayal he had allowed into his life. The confrontation with Clara had not just been a personal shock, it was a public one. News outlets, alerted by security officials and legal filings, quickly reported the shocking story of a millionaire's fiancé abusing his elderly mother. Clara's image as the poised, glamorous partner dissolved overnight. Sponsors pulled their deals. Social media erupted with outrage. But Ethan didn't gloat. Justice, to him, was not about humiliation, it was about protection. He engaged lawyers to file charges of assault and elder abuse, ensuring Clara could never harm Margaret, or anyone else, again. Once the legal machinery was in motion, Ethan made the most important decision: relocating his mother. They left the cold, oppressive mansion behind, moving her into a serene seaside home. Gentle waves crashed against the shore, a stark contrast to the fear and tension that had filled their previous residence. Professional caregivers were hired, not out of obligation, but to restore Margaret's dignity and peace. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan sat beside Margaret on the veranda, holding her hand. "I failed you," he whispered, the weight of his absence and trust in Clara heavy on his shoulders. Margaret shook her head gently. "You came back," she said softly, tears glistening. "That's all that matters. That's all any mother wants, the child who comes home." Ethan felt a knot of guilt and relief uncoil in his chest. The battle was far from over. Clara's legal case loomed ahead, but in that moment, he realized the true victory wasn't in punishing her. It was in reclaiming his family's safety, dignity, and trust. Outside, the night settled quietly. For the first time in weeks, Margaret slept peacefully, knowing her son had returned, not just home, but to his responsibility, and to her. Months had passed since Clara's expulsion from the Blackwood mansion, but the echoes of that night still lingered. For Ethan, life had changed in subtle and profound ways. He no longer measured success by wealth, status, or power. Instead, he measured it by moments of genuine connection, by the smiles and laughter of the people he loved most, starting with his mother. The seaside home was now a sanctuary. Margaret had regained her strength, her once shakily gait replaced by the slow, confident steps of someone who had found peace. Each morning, she walked along the beach, gathering seashells and watching the waves lap gently against the shore. Ethan joined her whenever possible, working alongside caregivers to ensure her comfort and happiness. One evening, Ethan prepared for a different kind of gathering, a charity event dedicated to protecting the elderly from abuse and neglect. The hall was filled with philanthropists, social workers, and journalists. Large portraits of resilient elders adorned the walls, and Ethan's speech would be the centerpiece of the evening. As he stepped onto the stage, Margaret sat beside him, her presence a calm anchor amidst the buzzing anticipation. Ethan cleared his throat, taking a deep breath. "I once trusted the wrong person," he began, his voice steady but resonant. "I believed that love alone could shield my family from harm. But I learned a harsh lesson. Those who hurt the weak reveal their true character." He paused, glancing at Margaret, whose eyes gleamed with quiet pride. "We have a responsibility," he continued, "to protect the vulnerable in our families, in our communities, and in our world. I dedicate tonight to those who cannot speak, to those who need someone to fight for them. And I pledge to use my resources to ensure that no one else suffers in silence as my mother did." The audience listened in stunned silence, then rose in applause. Cameras flashed, social media erupted, but Ethan's focus remained on Margaret. Her proud smile said more than any words. She had endured, she had survived, and now, she was honored. Outside, in the quiet night, Ethan reflected on the past months. Clara's actions had been a shocking betrayal, but they had also been a catalyst. He had reclaimed his family, his conscience, and his purpose. The woman who had once deceived him was now a cautionary tale, a reminder that true character shows in the way we treat those who are vulnerable. As the event concluded, Ethan took Margaret's hand, guiding her to the veranda. Waves crashed against the shore in a gentle rhythm. For the first time, Ethan realized that some endings were not about revenge or justice. They were about redemption, love, and the unwavering bond between a mother and her son. And in that moment, the future seemed wide, open, and filled with hope.